In 2001, Illinois enacted legislation to specifically address the issues of seclusion, known as isolated timeout in Illinois, and physical restraint in public schools. The State Board of Education, in collaboration with stakeholders around the state, developed rules governing the use of isolated timeout and physical restraint. We relied upon information from research and evidence-based practices, and our rules became effective in January of 2002. These rules apply to all students in Illinois, not only those with disabilities. They limit the employment of isolated timeout and physical restraint to be used only to preserve the safety of self or others, and to prohibit the use of seclusion or restraint for the purpose of punishment or exclusion. Illinois rules impose time limits, require continual visual monitoring of and communication with the student, can only be used when the student poses a physical risk to self or others. There is no medical contraindication to its use, and staff applying the restraint have been trained in the safe application in accordance with the rules within the past 2 years. Further restrictions include prohibiting the use of chemical or mechanical restraints and requiring that students who communicate via sign language or with augmentative devices be allowed to have their hands free of restraint. The need for seclusion and restraint is in part the result of insufficient knowledge, skills, and systems of prevention and behavior support. The majority of behaviors which result in the use of seclusion or restraint can be prevented by early identification and intensive interventions, implemented within a school-wide system of behavioral support. For the past 10 years, the State Board of Education in Illinois has invested in the implementation of school-wide Positive and Behavior Intervention Supports, PBIS. PBIS is a systems approach to establishing the social culture needed for schools to achieve social and academic gains while minimizing problem behaviors for all students. Key to the implementation of PBIS is the recognition that we must teach and acknowledge behavioral and social skills just as we teach academic skills. School-wide positive behavior interventions and supports emphasizes the implementation of evidence-based practices, school, district, and state systems that support the implementation of these practices, and ongoing collection of data for decision-making purposes. Drs. Robert Horner and George Sagai of the National PBIS Center note that these elements are operationalized by 5 guiding principles. First, invest in prevention to establish a foundation intervention that is empirically validated to be effective, efficient, and sustainable. Teach and acknowledge appropriate behavior before relying on negative consequences. Use regular universal screening to identify students who need more intense support and provide that support as early as possible and with the intensity needed to meet the needs of the students. Establish a continuum of behavioral and academic interventions for use when students are identified as needing more intense support. And finally, use progress monitoring to assess A, the fidelity with which the support is provided, and B, the impact of that support on student academic and social outcomes. Over 1,000 schools in Illinois now implement PBIS as part of our statewide network under the direction of Dr. Lucille Eber and Ms. Barbara Sims. This includes alternative schools, residential schools, and juvenile correction centers. Data collection over these past 10 years shows significant reductions in office disciplinary referrals, suspensions, and expulsions, resulting in increased time for academic instruction and learning. Schools that implement PBIS with fidelity show improved academic outcome as measured by our state assessments. Illinois schools implementing PBIS show greater capacity to support students with the most complex needs. These schools have a reduction in the number of instances which require intensive interventions, including seclusion and restraint, and increased effectiveness of individual behavior support plans. Illinois data shows that school-wide PBIS can have a positive impact in all programs, including reduction in the use of restraints in separate facilities for students with emotional disorders by more than 50% in the first year of implementing the program. Show a reduction in the occurrence of critical incidents by more than 60% following implementation in youth correctional centers. Based on our experience in Illinois, we urge the adoption of national voluntary standards and model policies on the use of seclusion and restraint. This can only be effective when coupled with a strong commitment and investment in the training and ongoing support of staff in the use of evidence-based prevention strategies as supported by the Positive Behavior for Effective Schools Act. Thank you for your support and attention to this important topic.